QuickBooks is built around several lists. To demonstrate this, instead of using the case file with none of the transactions entered into it, I'm going to use the completed version of this case for this demonstration. Notice solution is in the company name to remind me that I'm looking at the completed solution to this case. So you're not going to see all these exact same things in your file until you complete the case. But for now, we just want to go over an overview of lists and how they're used in QuickBooks. Now I'm going to open up the Vendor Center, something you will learn about later, by clicking on Vendors. So I could click on Vendors here, or I could click on Vendors, Vendor Center. Being visual, I like to use the home page, so I'm just going to click on Vendors. Now on the left side is a list of our vendors and the balances that we owe them. Some of them we owe them some money, others we do not. Again, you're not going to have any of these balances in yours because we're looking at the solution to your case. So to talk about lists, I first want to go to Jeter Janitorial, and I want to see all their transactions. So to do that, I'm going to single click on Jeter Janitorial, and then over here I'm showing a list of all transactions with all the dates. So it looks like we only have one transaction with Jeter Janitorial so far in the history of this company. Now I want to inspect this transaction, so I will double click it to open it. This is called drilling down. So again, if you ever see a transaction, you can double click it to open it. And again, we'll learn how to do all of this later in future videos. I just want to open up a transaction that you will later do in this case so you can kind of see how lists are being used. So first of all, it looks like this transaction was entered in a window called Write Checks. We can tell that it's the Write Checks window because it says Write Checks up here. Again, you will learn later about what this Write Checks window is for. It's pretty self-explanatory. Now if your window is not maximized, it would look like this. So then the name of the window would be right here, Write Checks. But now I don't like to have them minimized or the smaller version of the windows. I like to have them maximized. So I always maximize my windows to minimize the clutter. Now the first list we need to be aware of is a vendor list. The vendor list is simply a list of the vendors with whom you do business. So we have this drop-down list called Pay to the Order of. So if we click on the drop-down list, we see our vendor list. And notice if we wanted to add a new vendor, we could simply click on Add New. So that is the first list that we are going to be using, the vendor list. Another list that is very commonly used in QuickBooks is found in this account drop box. So if we click on this account drop box, we see a whole bunch of accounts, expenses, assets, etc. In Intro to Accounting, we learned that this list is called the chart of accounts. Now another way to see this chart of accounts is you go to Lists, Chart of Accounts, or if you're like me, you use the keyboard shortcut called Control A. So I click on that, and then here is our list of our accounts. It is quite long, and we could add to it and modify these accounts as needed. Going back to the Write Checks window, in other words, that transaction that we're just looking at, we can see that we wrote a $125 check to Jeter Janitorial Services, and what was it for? It was for janitorial expenses. So that's how QuickBooks uses the vendor list and the chart of accounts list. Other lists that are commonly used are the customer list and the items list. So if we wanted to see the customers list, we could click on Home and then click on Customers here, or go to Customers, Customer Center, either one. I like to use the home page, so I'm going to click on Customers. So if we had any customers, they would appear here. So later on, we'll be adding customers in a future chapter. And the other list that is very commonly used is the items list. So to view that, you go to Lists, Item List. And this list is usually used as a list of services and products the company sells. It's empty now, so later we'll learn how to add services and products that the company will sell. So again, we'll learn more about the item list, the chart of accounts, the vendor list, and the customer list later in the quarter. I just wanted to give you an overview of how QuickBooks uses lists, and it's quite extensive. So get familiar with using lists in QuickBooks.